You are listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Dan Zarzana.
And I'm Jeff Garvin.
Let the journey begin. Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant day to you wherever you may be. Welcome to Campbell Vogler Field for today's matchup of the Chino Hills Scribes and the Burbank Irascibles. It's a beautiful day here, 75 degrees and sunny, as our two teams prepare to discuss another baseball film. Jeff, the last time this happened was 4 years ago during the 2018 season. I'd say they're due for a comeback.
That's right, Dan, and thanks to our Patreon voters, we are looking at Major League, written and directed by David S. Ward. Back in 1974, Ward won the Academy Award for Best Screenplay for the outstanding film The Sting, so the man knows how to string words together, Dan.
Released on April 7th, 1989, just a few months shy of the 90s, so close. Opening week of the 1989 professional baseball season, Major League opened at number 1, pushing Rain Man out of the top spot. The film went on to earn $49.7 million against its $11 million budget.
That's a big hit, Dan. You know...
That's good. That was good. That was a good ad-lib. Yes, and.
Yeah. You know how I love casting. Casting's my thing. This film has an amazing cast. Tom Berenger, who is extremely underrated, in my opinion. Charlie Sheen, Corbin Burnson, Margaret Whitten, James Gammon, Rene Russo, Dennis Haysbert, Bob Uecker, and Wesley Snipes.
Pre-Canadian Wesley Snipes.
Oh, yeah.
And Rene Russo making her second appearance on the podcast after Outbreak. All right, let's take a look at awards consideration for Major League. There's, here's one. Wait, one goddamned award nomination?
Dan, you can't say goddamned on the podcast.
Don't worry, nobody's listening anyway. In 1990, Major League was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film by the Japanese Academy. In an upset, it did not win.
What a slap in the face. Okay, it's game time. Break in your mitt, warm up your arm, and tear open your pouch of Big League Chew. This is the hero's journey of Major League. The first inning of the hero's journey begins with The Ordinary World, or World of Common Day, wherein we reveal one of our co-hosts' terrible ignorance about baseball. And we meet our main character in his status quo normal life. We open this film with a 3-minute credit sequence. This is a very 70s, 80s opening sequence. Nobody's in a hurry. And it's set to a song called Burn On by Randy Newman. More about him in the tidbits.
Great song, too.
It's a great song.
Sets a perfect tone for this film.
It really does. And it's a beautifully written song, and it's a love letter to the city of Cleveland, Ohio. And it takes us on a tour through the city where we see the buildings and the bridges that are iconic, and we see working people doing their lives. It's a portrait of the city of Cleveland.
Yeah.
And we end at Cleveland Stadium, home of the then Cleveland Indians baseball team franchise club. So right off the bat,
baseball team franchise club.
Right off the bat, see what I did there? We understand that the setting is very important in this film. It's about tradition and fans and America's pastime and institutional racism. Okay, sorry about that last part.
That has since been corrected.
It has. When our story begins, the Cleveland Indians are in a historic slump. They haven't won a pennant in 35 years. To make things worse, the team owner has died, leaving the franchise to his ex-showgirl wife. And so at this board meeting that opens the film, Rachel Phelps, the new owner, assures the team management that she wants to make history, but not by winning. She wants the team to lose so badly that their attendance dips below 800,000 and they can get out of their lease with the city of Cleveland because she wants to move to Miami, where she's been promised a mansion in Boca Raton and a free membership to the Palm Beach Polo and Country Club. Wow. We open the story and we get the World of Common Day of the world from the villain.
Yeah.
You want us to lose?
No, we've been losing. What I want is for us to finish dead last.
We meet our heroes during their calls to adventure. It's an ensemble cast movie. It's a baseball team movie, right? The Indians are this ragtag team of misfit players. But there are two really fully developed hero arcs in the movie. And I'm going to lean toward one, but I'm going to touch on the other. I think arguably our chief hero, see what I did there?
Oh, wow, man. You are on fire.
Is Jake Taylor, played by Tom Berenger. He's an ex-Indian and a former all-star at Boston who developed knee problems and ended up playing in the Mexican League. He's way past his prime, but now he's been tapped to help ruin the Indians. We've got another guy who's important and whose call to adventure we see on screen early in the film, Maverick rookie Ricky Vaughn, played by Charlie Sheen, who's been playing in the California Penal League, like for a prison for crimes. He was stealing a car. Those are our two heroes in their worlds of common day, as I would plant them.
We also see during this opening credit sequence the locals of Cleveland and their opinions of the upcoming season and how they are all very down on their home club's prospects.
Yeah.
I think that's important because that is a thread that follows through the film. I also want to point out that General Manager Charlie Donovan is played by John Carpenter player Charles Cyphers. If he looked familiar, Charles Cyphers is in a lot of John Carpenter films.
Was he in Halloween?
Yes, he was. He was the sheriff. So this is Charles Cyphers' second appearance on the hero's journey as well.
You are listening to the Charles Cypher podcast.
6 Degrees of Charles Cyphers.
That's one thing I love about this podcast is finding those connections and celebrating those actors who had smaller roles but who are clearly part of the American film-going consciousness. Like, you might not have known his name, but in your mind, you're like, oh, I've seen that guy in other things before.
That man's face.
Yeah.
He's so recognizable.
Yeah. I didn't put that together. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, that brings us to Call to Adventure. The hero is presented with a challenge which renders him unable to continue living in the comfort of the ordinary world. Jake Taylor is passed out on his rickety bed at a roadside inn or motel or something in Mexico where he is drunk. The phone rings. Charlie Donovan is calling from the Indians and he wants to invite Jake Taylor to spring training. Lou Brown, played by James Gammon, if you might recognize his face, you certainly recognize his voice. This guy has a very distinctive gravel voice. He is currently the manager of the Toledo Mud Hens for the last 30 years. Rachel wants to hire him as the team manager. So Charlie Donovan gives him a call while Lou is working at Tire World.
Everybody's got a day job.
And then the reveal of Ricky Vaughn when you see him, just a close-up shot of head and shoulders, and he's very clearly standing at a payphone.
Yeah.
And then there's like 2 jump cuts backward to reveal that he's
in an orange
shirt and then back to behind the bars.
Yeah.
Pretty great editing there, I thought. I appreciated that.
Yes.
That was what I saw as the call to adventure.
Agreed. That brings us to refusal of the call. Confronted with fear of the unknown, our hero refuses to engage in the adventure. Sometimes this energy is expressed from within, and sometimes from without. Jake's refusal comes in the form of complete denial. He thinks Donovan's invitation is a prank.
This isn't very funny, I'm hungover. My knees are killing me, and if you're going to pull this at least you could have said you were from the Yankees.
Rick has a refusal that is immediate, too. I think it's a refusal from without, kind of, as Donovan says.
Well, caused by behavior from within.
Donovan says he heard about Rick's pitching out of Portland last year. And Rick says, yeah, I'm not really with them anymore. And then he gets invited to spring camp in Arizona, March 1st. And he says, I might not be able to make it by then. So you're like, right. Oh, his sentence, right. Ostensibly because he'll be serving in prison.
Yeah. And that line is coupled with the final jump cut backwards to reveal that the payphone is behind bars. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, well directed, David S. Ward. And then I loved Lou's call to adventure and his reply.
Let me think it over, will you, Charlie? I got a guy on the other line about some white walls. I'll talk to you later.
He's either not taking the offer seriously or it's such an unexciting offer to him that it's not as important to him as this white wall sale that he's about to make.
That brings us to meeting with the mentor. where the hero receives counsel on how to operate in the special world. This is one of my favorite segments of this entire film.
Oh, yeah.
Spring training. This is a long meeting with the mentor sequence. It involves all of these players that we've been discussing receiving mentorship and counsel from manager Lou Brown. He has accepted the offer to manage the Indians. Jake Taylor arrives in a taxi, and as he walks to the clubhouse, the coaches discuss his former status as an all-star with the Boston Red Sox. Later, Coach Brown says to Jake, as Jake is practicing catching, he says he needs a leader for the team on the field, and are you up to it? I need to know, are you 100%? And Jake says, yes, I am. Would I BS you about something like that? And Lou Brown says, you'd better if you want to make this team. And then Jake shanks a throw to second base to prove that he's ready. It's a great moment.
Yeah.
Great moment. We also meet Pedro Serrano, played by a then pretty much unknown Dennis Haysbert. Pedro Serrano is a Cuban refugee who came to the United States seeking religious freedom. Mm-hmm. And the coaches ask, what's his religion? And Donovan replies, voodoo. Oh boy. Pedro can hit fastballs into the stands, but curveball confounds him.
Yeah.
And he prays to Jobu to take his bat sphere away from the curveball. We then meet Willie Mays Hayes, played by Wesley Snipes, who drives up in a Volkswagen Bug with a Rolls-Royce hood.
Such a great car. I want that car.
He's overly confident, but he wasn't invited to spring training. None of these coaches know who this guy is. And so at night, when everybody is in these like military-style barracks, these guys, they looked like they were in almost Marine cadet uniforms or something.
Yeah, like they're
I
bunking.
forgot. I was like, who are these dudes?
It's like the barracks from Full Metal Jacket.
And they lift Willie Mays Hayes' bed up and they carry him outside. And he wakes up in the morning. He's got these like blue satin pajamas on. He's like, dang, I've been cut already?
Yeah.
And as these players are doing these sprint trials, he joins the sprint from behind, catches up, and then passes them. Yeah. And this impresses the coaches so much that they say, get this guy in a uniform.
Yeah.
They need his speed, but they very quickly realize that he can't hit.
Yeah.
Or he always tries to uppercut, really, is the thing. And Coach Brown counsels him, and he says,
With your speed, you should hit the ball on the ground and be legging them out. Every time I see you hit one in the air, you owe me 20 push-ups.
Now we get Ricky Vaughn, played by Charlie Sheen. He arrives on the back of a motorcycle. He's under his leather jacket. He still has on an orange shirt, which made me wonder, did he escape? And he's there on time, and he said he wasn't going to be there. Did he escape prison so that he could attend spring training?
That may be a thread that never gets tied at the end of the film.
Loved that. Vaughn has tremendous power as a pitcher, but no control. Mm-hmm. Coach Brown says, we better teach this kid some control before he kills somebody.
Yeah.
We then meet Roger Dorn, played by Corbin Burnson, who arrives in a classic 1920s era touring car, takes up 2 parking spaces. He's an arrogant veteran third baseman who dodges ground balls during practice because he doesn't want to risk a ball hitting him in the face and ruining his good looks because he's got plans for after retirement.
He strides into training camp with a set of golf clubs over his shoulder. He's at the country club as far as we're concerned.
Coach Brown says every time Dorn doesn't block a ball at third base, he's got to do 40 sit-ups. But when Dorn presents his contract, stating that he doesn't have to do any extra calisthenics that he feels unnecessary, Coach Brown throws the contract on the ground. You hear a zip, and then the sound of liquid. He is urinating on the man's contract. Such a great moment.
The foley of pee on contract was worthy of an Oscar nod.
And then the final player that I want to mention is Eddie Harris, played by Chelsea Ross, who is the aging pitcher on the squad. He smears all manner of foreign substances on his body so that he can get them onto the ball surreptitiously during the game.
Crisco, Bardol, Vagisil.
And sometimes snot. He'll rub a little jalapeno pepper on his nose so it makes his nose run.
Yeah.
Gross. But this is his mentorship to Ricky Vaughn.
You put snot on the ball?
I haven't got an arm like yours. I gotta put anything on it I can find. Someday you will too.
There's also some mentorship from Jake. He is, as Coach Brown says, I need somebody to lead this team on the field. And that is Jake's role. And you see him counseling the younger guys about the pink tag that's in the locker room. And then also on the last day, he says,
look, whatever happens, you just keep it to yourselves until you get out of clubhouse. You don't want to celebrate in front of guys who just died.
I actually had massive overlap between the mentor moments and Test Allies Enemies, because all of the things you just mentioned, those are all also failed tests. And they also occur after we meet the whole team, which is really meeting allies and enemies. So I had a lot of overlap there, but the next stage of the journey is crossing the threshold. The hero must pass a barrier to enter the special world. This crossing represents the hero's commitment to taking on the adventure. For me, it's showing up at spring training and walking onto that field. For Jake and for Ricky, stepping into training is their commitment to being on the team. And they have to pass those tests to be worthy enough to make the team, the regular season. So that's where I drew the crossing line, is showing up for spring training. Do you agree?
I understand that, but I said that the crossing of the threshold really was them surviving spring training. But I totally get, like, maybe there's two crossings of the threshold then. There's the crossing of the threshold onto spring training.
Well, you often refer to that section as crossing the first threshold, which implies that there are more than one threshold. So,
well, it's not me that does that. That's Voglers' language.
Yes, I know, but like in our little bullet point template that we use, we call it crossing the threshold, but you often emphasize first. And that's interesting to me, because if we look at that one word, the first threshold, in the context of our analysis here, we've definitely identified two thresholds. And so I like yours too. We
simultaneously praise and scold each other for adhering to format and runtime.
Yeah.
And there's also, I feel like, a very clear act break in the filmmaking.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
And it happens at like 27 minutes, which is perfect in terms of screenplay length of this is the end of Act 1.
Hey, forget about doing it. You got other things to do.
Like what?
Like packing for Cleveland.
And then cut to a little montage of Cleveland. So that's like, okay, we have now left training camp in Tucson, and now we're in the big show.
And the other thing about introducing all those characters before Act 2 is that this is an ensemble cast. And so while they are also allies, they're heroes too, because it's really the team story. So you have to get those character introductions in Act 1. So I'll buy that.
Yeah. There's one more moment that I want to mention as a part of the crossing of the threshold. There's a diner, and there's three guys that are crowded around a newspaper, and the server comes up and she says, "What do you think about our chances this year?" And the guy holding the paper says, "It doesn't look too good." His hat, he's wearing a Cleveland Indians baseball cap. That thing is worn and balled up and wrinkled, and you can tell this guy is a lifelong fan. That's probably the same hat he's been wearing for 30 years.
Great set design.
Loved
that. Costume design, I guess.
Yeah, I loved that imagery. But the last thing I want to mention is crossing the threshold. It is an evolution of you mentioning the team stepping onto the field of spring training, and that is Jake at Cleveland Municipal Stadium walking up the steps and stepping onto the empty field in an empty stadium, and he fantasizes hitting the game-winning home run.
2 down, bottom of the ninth. Game is tied. Taylor calls his shot. There's the pitch.
The thing I love about that scene is that you get clearly in that moment that Jake's dream since he was a little boy was to do this. And even though he's over the hill, it still has the same magic for him that it had a million years ago.
Yes.
That's the moment he dreams of, and he appreciates it, and he doesn't take it for granted. And as his character develops, or rather as his character is revealed, because I think he's changed a lot before the movie begins. We get the sense that this is the restart of a journey, a second chance in a lot of ways for him. You just get the chance that this time he's not gonna take it for granted. And I love that about Jake.
Yes. Anything else?
No, I need a coffee refill. Stat.
Yeah, me too. I'm empty. So let's take a break head on over to the Campbell Cafe and discuss our side quests. Jeff, I was so excited to hear that they put in a Campbell Cafe here at the top of the park of Campbell Vogler Field.
Me too, but man, the prices are crazy. $17 for a cup of coffee?
We got ours for free. You didn't get yours for free? Oh, you didn't tell them who you are.
Patrons, thank you for this $17.99 12-ounce coffee. I appreciate it.
Welcome to the side quest, where Jeff and I are going to take a break from the current journey and enjoy our $17.99 coffee and discuss our side quests that we've undertaken recently. So, Jeff, since our last episode, what have you been up to?
I watched Shazam, 2019 Shazam, the DC Comics film.
Okay.
It is a superhero story about foster kids. My son watched it 3 times and he loved it so much. He's like, Dad, you have to watch this. So we watched it together and it is awesome. Like, as a superhero movie, it's very tongue-in-cheek and cheesy. But looking at it through the eyes of a foster kid watching a superhero movie, it is incredible. It was very emotional for the two of us to watch. It spawned many conversations because the foster kids go through the loss that foster kids go through. They're living in a group home. They don't know who their birth parents are, or they've been separated from them, and they're trying to find their identity. And then all of a sudden, superpowers. I recommend Shazam. It was really great.
Like real life.
Yeah. And then I went on a binge of Oscar nom movies. I watched Aaron Sorkin's Being the Ricardos.
What did you think of that one? That one I had mentioned last time. I want to know what you think.
First of all, I would watch a coffee commercial written by Aaron Sorkin. I love the flow and rhythm of his dialogue. I've seen the first film that he directed, Molly's Game. I really enjoyed. I thought his directing had really matured. I learned a lot about the origins of sitcom. You know, I did a bunch of sitcom work, and I hadn't realized how much of how sitcoms work was a result of Desi and Lucy's instruction. There's a scene where Lucy calls the cast to the set at 2 a.m. to rework a scene, and everyone around her thinks she's being unreasonable, and then she kind of unveils, you have no idea the pressure that I'm under. I have to be funny every single week. I have to be perfect. And so that's why we're up at 2 a.m. going over this scene, because it has to be funny. And I thought, wow, that's a really different look at the life of an artist who's successful. So I loved it. I watched The Lost Daughter with Olivia Colman, about this woman reflecting on her life as a mother. And she's just an incredibly complex character. It reveals the hard side of parenting. Parenting is often reflected as this, pure joy experience. And that movie I really resonated with this woman who finds it the most challenging experience. Like, at one point, she meets a woman with a baby, and you're supposed to say, "Oh my gosh, you're gonna love. She's so beautiful." And Olivia Colman's final parting words to her are, "Children are a crushing responsibility." And then she walks away, and this poor woman is like, "Oh God, what have I done?" And then finally I watched for the first time, and I'm sure that even though I watched it, you're going to give me crap for not having watched it before. So there's really no winning I can have, right?
Damn.
I watched Taxi Driver. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was terrifying, intense, and compassionate, and non-judgmental. The ending didn't make me very happy, and I want to learn more about how the ending came about, but I love the movie. I thought it was really great. I gave it 4 stars. I don't think it'll ever be in my top favorite movies, but as a piece of film history and acting and directing, I just think it's extraordinary.
Taxi Driver is a movie that I really enjoyed, but I have a hard time thinking of it as a movie that I want to watch again.
On the reading front, as you know, I've been diving back into acting. So I think last time I talked about the Sanford Meisner book. This time I read Stella Adler's The Art of Acting. Now, Stella and Sanford both were part of the group theater, which was like the first American theater that was heavily influenced by Konstantin Stanislavski, who's considered like the grandfather of the method. So it's interesting to read these books by these different students of that theater and how much they hate each other and trash each other's method, because Meisner digs at Adler and Adler digs at Meisner. So it was great to sort of uncover the parts of techniques that I've learned that are in Adler's camp. I did not enjoy the format of the book. It's basically pieces of lectures that she does, and this was late 20th century, like I want to say 80s, that she published this book. And so she just goes off on how lazy and poorly dressed and slouchy actors of the day are, and how in her day you had to dress up to go to. So it's a lot of like anti-pop culture. And I'd love to pop her into 2022 and be like, how do you like things now? But I did get some value out of it. And then I read a play by David Mamet called Oleana, which was published and performed in 1992, starring William H. Macy. And it's about a sexual harassment conflict between professor and student. And it is Me Too 20 years ahead of time. And it was a fascinating play. I read it in a day, and it was just a great, great play. So I highly recommend it. Wow, I just took up almost 11 minutes. You're going to have to cut a lot of that nonsense. Dan, what side quest did you take? Oh, and I played a lot of Knights of the Old Republic for the Old Republic podcast we're going to record soon.
Good, because that was my primary side quest. I know that's a long game, and we were getting close to crunch time, and I didn't want to get to a point where a week before we record that episode, I'm suddenly trying to cram through half of the game in 1 week. So what we're doing is, if we haven't already mentioned it or made it clear, the hosts of the Old Republic podcast, Cassie and Brian, have invited us to appear for their May the 4th episode and discuss the hero's journey of the game Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, which is a game that came out 10 years ago. No, 20? 20 years ago. I think it was like 2003.
Yeah, 2000. Holy crap, it's almost 20 years old.
Way back when that game first came out, I played most of it, but my save file got corrupted like right at the end. I was on the last planet and I was devastated, and it was just, I was like, so much time had put into it, and I just couldn't go back and start over right away, and I just shelved it, and I never went back until this invitation. I thought, okay, this is my opportunity to play through KOTOR once more. And the amount of anxiety I was feeling while I was at that same point that I was 20 years ago when my save file got corrupted, I was like, oh God, what if it happens again? This is where I was. What if it happens again? But it's done, and I'm ready for the episode.
I am not done or ready at all.
Well, by the time this episode comes out, we will have already recorded the episode of the Old Republic podcast, so I hope that you're done by then. So you did a lot of different things, and I did one thing that probably took up the same amount of runtime as all of the things that you did.
And now I need to catch up. You should read. Then you have to watch like 8 movies and stuff between now and the next episode.
I might do that because I haven't really sat down and watched a movie in a while. Oh, you know what? I did watch one movie.
Oh.
On April 1st, my wife sat me down and she said, we're going to watch a fun movie. And she put in April Fool's Day, I want to say it was like 1983 schlocky, low-budget horror movie.
Huh.
It is a goofy, it's a dumb movie. It's not good. It is not a good movie, but it's a fun movie.
Worth seeing or no?
It's worth watching once.
Okay.
But know that you should have low expectations going in and then lower your expectations even further. There's a great reveal at the end that I really enjoyed. So worth watching for that.
Huh.
But it's not Scream or even Halloween.
Got it.
All right. Well, those were side quests. Let's get back to the ballpark for Act 2 of Major League. Act 2 of the hero's journey begins with tests, allies, and enemies, or the road of trials. Having crossed the first threshold and then the second threshold, as we've discussed, the hero makes allies, although has already made allies, makes enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove their worthiness. Based on that synopsis of the segment, I absolutely understand and accept why spring training would be part of the road of trials, because absolutely all of these players have to prove their worthiness in order to be accepted on the team. So we'll go over the allies. All the players, of course, Jake, Willie, Ricky, they're all allies to each other. Harry Doyle, played by Bob Uecker, is
love him so. He's the best part of this movie.
The Indians announcer. He is hysterical. He adds so much to this movie.
It almost becomes a Chrisopher Guest mockumentary because he's so good.
The cosplay fans, often in left field, who are diehard fans. They dress up, they put war paint on.
And there's the one of them that clearly doesn't understand much about the rules of baseball, and he's my favorite. Like, a home run has been hit, and he goes, too high, too high. So great.
My wife and I say that every time we're watching a baseball game and somebody hits a home run against the Dodgers, we both go, too high.
I love that.
That is standard for us. Lynn, played by Renee Russo, is an ex-girlfriend of Jake Taylor. So Lynn is a bit of a shapeshifter, sort of. She's not an antagonist, but she's not always welcoming of Jake.
Agreed. In that romantic comedy paradigm, she would be the antagonist that the hero has to win over. But I agree, she's a shapeshifter.
When they meet at a restaurant, she gives him a fake phone number. The classic ploy. We're like, oh boy. But then later on, she sticks up for him.
Yeah.
Enemies. Lynn's fiance, Tom, the wealthy attorney with the penthouse apartment. The entire New York Yankees, specifically Clu Haywood, the villainous first baseman.
Oh, this gross tobacco juice spitting.
Slow-mo tobacco spewing was just foul.
David Ward.
So foul.
Did it so, like, it's all you need to know about that guy.
Okay, so let's get into the tests. Now we are in Cleveland. Jake takes Ricky and Willie to a dinner at a nice restaurant.
Here's to baseball. And to the start of 2 great careers.
And for me, just one more good year in the sun.
What a great line.
Yeah.
Willie drinks wine like I do.
I was so bummed that I didn't get this segment because I had this whole joke about the mouth swishing. It just validates everything you've ever said and invalidates most of what I've ever said about wine. Because he totally does the swish it around your mouth thing. It's so good.
But Willie Mays Hayes, I don't know how it validates it, because Willie Mays Hayes is very much a guy who thinks much more highly of himself than is really deserved.
That's
for
fair.
The first half of the movie until he kind of comes into his own. While at this restaurant, Jake sees his old fling, Lynn, at another table with a guy. And he tricks her into thinking that there's a phone call for her at the front desk, but it's really him. And they have a talk, and he's trying to rekindle things. She's not interested. Finally, she agrees to give him her phone number. Next test I saw was pre-game locker room. Game 1 of the season, we see the players going through their pre-game rituals. Serrano is shaving his head with a hunting knife. Willie is making sure his uniform and his facial hair are looking good and up to snuff. Dorn is reading the Wall Street Journal in his underwear.
Yeah, he's over it.
Ricky is chewing his fingernails to the nub and nervously tossing a baseball into the air, and Jake tells him to relax. We've got 162 of these things.
Yeah.
Coach Brown tells the players that every newspaper in the country has picked the Cleveland Indians to finish dead last, and he wants to prove them wrong. And then Eddie Harris, who we see is a very religious man, and he wants to pray with the team, while Serrano, who is his religion is voodoo, he's doing a little ritual, and it sets off an explosion in his locker.
Dear Heavenly Father, we humbly pray that you will guide... Jesus Christ, Serrano.
Have to wake up back.
The smoke from this explosion, however, sets off the fire suppression system in the locker room, dousing everybody with water, so we get a little baptism here.
Oh, Dan found the baptism.
Before they take the field, they rise up out of that locker room, professional baseball players.
I love it.
Next test is the actual game. This is where we get our introduction to Harry Doyle, who pours Jack Daniels into his cup as he introduces the team to the audience. He says there's a lot of new faces on the team, and hopefully we'll have the names to go with those faces before their first at-bat. Hysterical. I loved that line. And maybe I've been spoiled by listening to Vin Scully my entire life, but I have to believe that a team roster and dossier is provided to the team's broadcast team. And the fact that the Indians didn't even bother to do that speaks volumes.
Yeah, like they don't have a PR person. They don't have that function because their budget's so low, right?
It's not in the budget, yeah. But I also love how I love how Harry Doyle, when he's pouring his whiskey, he also like wipes his finger along the neck of the bottle to catch the drip, and then he wipes the drip behind his ear like cologne. Oh man, Bob Uecker's so great.
Just a reminder, fans, about Die Hard Night coming up here at the stadium. Free admission to anyone who was actually alive the last time the Indians won a pennant.
Yeah, Bob Uecker is the Vin Scully of the Milwaukee Brewers. And yes. I wonder if he is that way as he's announcing for the Brewers. Like, because he's funny. He's naturally funny. And I wonder if that comes through in his broadcasts for the Brewers. Brewers fans, write to us.
Yeah.
What's Bob Uecker like? IRL. The first game doesn't go great. Willie Mays Hayes, he makes a showy catch in the outfield. Coach praises him and then scolds him for it. Nice catch. Don't ever effing do it again. And as the first batter of the season, he beats an infield blooper to first base for an infield hit. So not a bad start for Willie Mays Hayes. Doyle says he's the first Indians hitter in 15 years to start the season with a base hit. So that, again, reminds us of how bad the Indians have been for so many years. Now we meet the Yankees' first baseman, Haywood.
Insert sound of spitting tobacco.
Hayes tells Haywood that he bought 100 pairs of gloves, one for every base he's going to steal this year. And Haywood promptly tricks Hayes and picks him off. And it's all downhill from there.
Mm-hmm.
A Mr. Holland's Opus style montage of failed defensive plays. Vaughn coming in.
Vaughn in deep trouble here with Clu Haywood, last year's American League home run champ at the plate. Vaughn kicks, fires. Here is a swing and a drive toward left field and deep. Oh, boy.
No way. Too high.
It is gone off the reservation. A grand slam home run for Haywood.
Vaughn ends up beaning one of the batters after he gives up a home run.
Mm-hmm.
He gets ejected from the game. The Indians end up losing that first game to the Yankees 9-0.
Ugh.
Brutal.
Yeah.
By contrast, I want to point out that the Dodgers this year won their first game against the Rockies 5-3. And were on pace for a 162-0 season, but then they lost game 2. So that dream is crushed.
Okay.
Next test is the next test of Jake's romantic quest with Lynn, where he calls the phone number she gave him and reaches Cuyahoga sheet metal and learns that it was a bum number. So he goes to the library where she works and confronts her.
You're still sore I never read Moby Dick?
You never read anything I asked you to.
All right, I'll check it out now. Oh, is this the whale section? I'll bet what's-his-name at the restaurant
Tom,
read it.
His name's Tommy. Keep your voice down.
What do you see in this guy?
Well, he's stable, intelligent, and I never found him in bed with a stewardess.
What I saw as the final test. We are now a quarter of the way through the season. The Indians are 15-24, 7 games out of first place. Bad, but not bad enough. And poor Charlie is drinking Maalox straight from the bottle during a meeting with Rachel. And she says
I missed that.
She didn't think that they would win 15 games all year and decides that they're coddling the team too much. So the team steps out onto the airport tarmac expecting to board an airplane, their 747 airplane to the next city, and are greeted by a clunky, sputtering propeller plane.
What's with this? You never leave from down here.
Maybe the jetway isn't working.
And this is good. This is real good. 757 in Milwaukee?
No, that's not your plane. Yours is this one rolling in.
And that's where I drew the end of tests.
That leads us to approach to the inmost cave. Vaughn gives his first autograph, but it's someone celebrating his horrible record of throwing wild pitches, which later he turns to his advantage. Euchre's becoming increasingly frustrated and inappropriate in his comments about the team.
So the Sons of Geronimo, still suffering from propeller lag, are nipped by the Brewers tonight 7-0. The only excitement for the Tribe provided by Rick Vaughn, who set an American League record by throwing 4 wild pitches in 1 inning.
Willie invites Jake out to a club, and he refuses because he's reading up to try and impress Lynn. I've heard women complain about romantic comedies of the 80s and 90s that the entire basis of pursuit is very gross and stalkery. And while I think that Jake's love and interest in Lynn is genuine and not creepy, he does some really creepy stuff by following her and showing up places that he shouldn't show up. It's kind of the classic example of that case.
Yeah, he does say, when Willie says, why don't you just tail her home from the library, he says that's a little juvenile, don't you think? So he does resist that, but he does ultimately take the advice and do exactly what Willie had suggested.
But I would say it's not so much juvenile as like disrespectful and creepy.
Yeah.
But it costs him because he follows her. But the joke's on Jake because it turns out he has followed her not to her own apartment, but to Tom's place.
Yeah.
The door to the penthouse opens, and it's a very uncomfortable moment when he realizes this isn't Lynn's apartment. But Tom insists,
and it's not even a lobby. Like the elevator opens into the apartment. It's like there's no security there. There's no like key card that you got to swipe to be able to have access to that guy's floor. You can just walk right on in.
So Tom insists that he come in and have a drink because this is his opportunity to shut down this guy.
Right.
Jake makes an earnest, if inappropriate, play for Lynn's affection in front of their guests, and Tom tries to humiliate him. Once it comes out that Jake's a baseball player, a Major League Baseball player, one of the women seems suddenly very interested and says, well, I hear that ball players make good salaries, and she's kind of turned on. And he says, well, it depends on how good you are. And she says, well, how good are you? And he says, I make the league minimum. And she like sort of immediately becomes disinterested. Doesn't even find out the dollar amount. She's just, oh, you're not a high earner. So when asked what he wants to do after baseball, he says, I want to move to Hawaii and raise Olympic athletes. And someone says, oh, what event? And he says, very specifically, 200-meter individual medley. And that's what Lynn competed in. So it's very uncomfortable as they realize, oh,
I love that reveal too. That's great.
It's a great little specific moment of writing. And Lynn didn't have to say that. She could have said, oh, swimming too. But she acknowledges it, which is a character choice for sure. So then Tom walks him to the door and says, stay away from her. And Rick replies, S my D. Still with the juvenile. Moving on in the approach to the dark place, Lou calls Rick into his office for a pep talk. And then kind of sees that Rick's squinting. And so he gives him an impromptu eye test and realizes his vision is awful. And maybe this is part of the wild pitching issue. So now he's got glasses. And I thought maybe a little delayed supernatural aid there. Now he has a weapon to improve his...
The eyeglasses are Rick's lightsaber. Yep.
Okay, next up is their game versus the A's. Thanks to some good mentorship from Jake, Vaughn gets his final out and they win the game. But during the game, Dorn shanks a catch, and it appears that he does it on purpose, or at least that he could have gotten it, but didn't put forth the effort. And so Jake goes to Dorn's house and confronts him about this missed catch in the ninth. And Dorn says, I'm going to be a free agent next year. I got plans after baseball. I'm not going to risk injury or defacement of this property, as he points to his handsome face for the sake of a losing team. And Jake says,
this is my last shot at a winner. And for the younger guys, it could be their only shot. I don't know what happened to you, but if you ever tank another play like you did today, I'm going to cut your nuts off and stuff them down your throat.
In response to the team's improving record, and in an attempt to make the team suck worse, Rachel cuts the budget. So now they don't even have hot water, and their old whirlpool, which has been repaired many times, has stopped working entirely.
Yeah.
And so we really see that she's ramping up her attempt to ruin this team. And then in a funny little moment, they make their own whirlpool by installing an outboard motor in this aluminum basin, and it's so old that it's like smoking and
belching black smoke.
Yeah, but it's a great moment of showing you how resourceful these guys are. They're not letting her budget cuts get in their way.
Yeah, I was really scared for Jake's feet.
No
being
kidding.
So close to the spinning motor blade.
Yes.
Like, Jesus,
Yes.
man, don't sink down too low.
Anyway, that's where I drew the end of Approach.
So that brings us to the ordeal, where the hero faces the ultimate test. So the Indians win a game, and Jake sees Lynn in the stands by herself. She has come to watch him play, but they make eye contact, and she bolts. And Jake chases her out into the parking lot, and because attendance at Indians games is so low, he spots her immediately in the parking lot.
Yes, that's a great comment.
The security guard tells Jake to take the dugout car, which is a little golf cart with a giant Indians baseball cap on it.
It's actually the bullpen.
The bullpen car. He uses that to chase Lynn back to Lynn's actual apartment, where he enters uninvited. Again, nobody locks their doors in Cleveland. He just walks right on in.
Burn on, Big River.
After proving to Lynn that he read Moby Dick, they have a night together. So there's an ordeal. We always talk about a love scene being an ordeal in movies like this.
Meeting with the goddess. Yeah, absolutely.
On the baseball side, Rachel is angry that the team is now 60-60. And so now instead of a crappy prop plane, the team has to travel to games on a decrepit bus that looks like it's from the 40s.
Yes.
After a loss to the Yankees on the road, Charlie Donovan meets with Coach Brown and confesses Rachel's plan. And Coach Brown then relays this information to the team.
What if we don't finish last?
She'll replace you with somebody who will. After this season, you'll be sent back to the minors or given your outright release.
I can't imagine any job, whether it's a baseball stadium or an office, but finding out that the person ultimately in charge wants you to fail, what that would do to team morale.
Yeah.
And you see it happen. As Brown is telling this information to the team, they are heartbroken.
Yeah.
And Jake, being the leader that he is, stands up and says, well, there's only one thing left to do. And even Dorn, you hear Dorn in his voice. Like his voice cracks when he says, what's that?
Even me?
And Jake says, yeah. And Jake says, win the whole effing thing. So this is him bolstering his troops.
Mm-hmm.
And then Coach Brown unveils a Rachel standee, which not sure when she posed for this. But
well, maybe from her showgirl days, right?
Because she was a former. So it is a cardboard cutout of Rachel wearing a cocktail dress, and Coach Brown reveals that this cocktail dress is divided into 32 parts, and says, "I figure we've got to win 32 more games in order to win our league pennant. And every time we win a game, we remove a piece." And he grabs one of the pieces of the dress on her shoulder and pulls it off to reveal her naked flesh beneath. And this gets the team riled up and motivated.
Worth mentioning that she has a speech bubble coming out of her mouth that says, "You stink." Like, amazing. So we're going to get back at her by objectifying her.
Yeah, I mean, yikes.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the ordeal from my perspective.
Well, that brings us to reward, the ultimate boon. Having faced their worst fear, the hero seizes the object of their quest. Here we have a montage. As those 32 games that they must win, they win. And the pieces come off of the cardboard cutout of Rachel. We get a classic 80s synth music with the bass synth, right? And the classic newspaper montage. The fans that we've seen throughout are wearing Wild Thing merch. They even beat the then California Angels, who in 1989 finished third in the American League West. And the Indians also do an Amex "Don't Steal Home Without It" commercial. Willie Mays Hayes.
And I love that Roger Dorn is the worst actor of them all.
And he's the one who's excited about doing endorsements and stuff after his baseball career. Willie is nailing gloves to his wall to commemorate his stolen bases. Rick is icing his knees. Charlie cheers in the VIP. Which, by the way, this VIP box, it looks like a garden trellis that they've like attached, and it's sitting in this like basket of chain link fence, just like the most like rickety looking.
It's the worst owner's box ever, and I think it again exemplifies just how poorly off the Indians are.
The regular season ends. Rachel's cutout is down to pasties, and the Indians are tied for first place with the New York Yankees.
Not bad for a has-been and a couple of never-will-be's, huh?
Yeah. We haven't won anything yet. Still got one game to go.
Well, that wraps up Act 2. Let's head over to the Vogler Lounge and enjoy our whatever themed beverage we've come up with. I'm excited to see what you've got.
Listeners and patrons, welcome to the Vogler Lounge. Every episode, Dan and I choose a themed beverage that we get to share and enjoy. Dan.
Yes.
What beverage have you selected to commemorate this episode of the podcast?
I'm starting.
You're for sure on the starting lineup.
I went to Bevmo with the intent to buy Golden Road's Blonde Ale with the Dodger branding on it. This is the same pint can, or stadium can they call it, that you can get at Dodger Stadium for approximately $48 or something like that. It's outlandish, the price that they charge for this stadium can at the baseball stadium. But you can also buy it at Bevmo. But while I was there, I saw something else that I wanted to try instead because I've never even heard of this before. So, Kershaw's Wicked Curve Grapefruit Wheat Ale from Buzz Rock Brewing Company in Torrance, California. Torrance is, for those of you unfamiliar with the LA area, is like south of Los Angeles on the coast, but it's still very much part of the concrete jungle that is the Los Angeles area. Kershaw, obviously the 3-time Cy Young award-winning Dodgers ace pitcher. I guess I should say first about Buzz Rock Brewing. Their little blurb on their website says, "For us, beer isn't just our passion, it's our life. We started brewing beer for a middle school science project back in the 70s, and the obsession hasn't stopped. Our 4-vessel, 20-barrel brew house has been custom designed for versatility in brewing any style of beer, from pilsners to stouts." Middle school science project. These guys started brewing beer.
That is awesome.
100% of the royalties go to Kershaw's Challenge. And the blurb about that is, since 2011, Ellen and Clayton Kershaw's charity Kershaw's Challenge has raised over $12 million for vulnerable and at-risk children living in Los Angeles, Dallas, where Kershaw is from, Zambia, and the Dominican Republic. Their goal is to partner with and work alongside organizations on the front lines of change to make life better for children.
Nice.
All right, so let's give a pour.
Ooh.
So it is straw color.
Yeah.
I would say.
Great pour. Perfect amount of head.
It's a little bit, it's not perfectly clear. There's a little bit of, you can probably, because you can't really see my face clearly through the glass. So there's a little bit of, I don't want to say cloudiness. Yeah, it's not condensation on the glass. But let's see, I am not generally a fan of wheat beers. So these are the sacrifices I make for our listening audience.
Bless you.
Citrus, which makes sense because this is a grapefruit. It doesn't smell like, now it does. I was going to say it doesn't smell like grapefruit, but now it does. Okay, that's dangerous. That tastes like grapefruit juice.
Wow.
Not quite as tart as grapefruit juice is, but that is very, very grapefruity. And what I normally don't like about wheat beers is I haven't had one in so long, really, that I've kind of put that offensive flavor out of my mind. But it's kind of Well, it's the same thing you don't like about yeasty, I guess. It's this really aggressive yeastiness. But I don't know. I think it's the same reason you don't like Belgian beers.
I feel the same way about wheat beers that you do.
Yeah, okay. But this, I get none of that gross yeasty flavor that I get from a wheat beer, whatever that quality is that prevails through all wheat beers I've ever had. This is just a real fruity, citrusy beer. ABV is 5.3%. Not real high. This would be and this is a pint can, so you could have a couple of these at the stadium, I would think. And I bought my 4-pack for probably half the price that you would buy one of these at the stadium.
Yeah.
That is really, really nice. I am pleasantly surprised when it said wheat beer. I thought, wow, I'm going to take one for the team, as they say, because I did not expect to enjoy it. But this is really, really good.
Awesome.
Very nice. What do you have?
Dan, as you know, my memory is notoriously unreliable the farther back we go. But I remember trying out for the Brea Olinda Wildcats baseball team.
What?
I got a wild hair that I was going to try out for the baseball team.
Did we try out at the same time? It was freshman year.
It was freshman year, and I don't think we did because I don't remember having you for consolation. Because at that point, we were friends already. No?
Yeah.
Well, we
a little bit during junior high. That's like kind of when we met and whatnot. But I think freshman year in high school, we didn't. Did we?
What I know is after our experience in choir together, if I had seen you at the tryout, I would have sought you out.
Choir.
Maybe we did or didn't. In any case, I didn't have high confidence, and I went up and did my first, I think it was a swing at the ball kind of thing. And I remember walking off the field and the coach kind of looking at me like, good effort, kid. It's the same look the casting for the dance audition I did. Okay.
Oh, wow. I remember my experience was very much like Serrano. Like my first, in the first little tryout thing, I hit a double and then I hit a triple, but anything beyond a fastball I couldn't hit. So that's why I got cut.
Wow. Man, brutal. Well, in honor of our tryouts, I'm drinking today from our Brea Olinda Wildcats pint glass.
How do you
class of 1994.
That was at one of the reunions, right?
The 20-year reunion in
the
2014.
I didn't get one of those.
Interesting.
Bummer.
So, Jake Taylor in the film is playing for the Mexican League. And as he walks into spring training, he has a T-shirt on advertising a Mexican beer called Tecate. It's actually pronounced Tecate.
Okay, you made my brain freeze for a second there. I was like, do I correct him? Does he actually think it's Tecate?
It's called Tecate. It's a Mexican beer called Tecate, based on western bicultural borderland of Baja California, Mexico. Tecate was created in 1944 to be the perfect thirst quencher for miners working in the area. It is still brewed in the namesake town of Tecate using the same recipe. It is a full-bodied lager with a refreshing, crisp malt flavor and a pleasant aftertaste, the way a Mexican cerveza should be. 4.5% alcohol by volume. Now, the website recommends drinking it from the can, so that's what I'm going to do, but I'm going to pour some of it into a glass so that we can do the flavor nose comparison. Here we go.
Yeah.
This is a 24-ounce can. I think it was $2.99 or $3.99 at a gas station.
Oh, wow.
They only had 12 packs at Bevmo, and I'm like,
gas station beer.
Pouring this right over my keyboard. It's kind of terrifying. This is a very pale yellow, maybe a little bit darker than a Budweiser.
Very clear.
Very clear.
Lots of carbonation, it looks like. Lots of bubbles.
Very bubbly.
Champagne-like, I would say, in appearance and carbonation, it looks like.
Very little head, as you would expect from a small pour. I mean, I only poured half a thing, so.
Yeah.
Malt hits me first. A little bit of sweetness. All right. There's not a lot of complexity here. I'm just going to take a sip. Yeah, if you took a Budweiser and it had a baby with a Corona, that's what this would taste like. It's more full-bodied than like a Budweiser or a Bud Light. And it's got a little bit of a stronger malt flavor, but the base beery taste is the same. You know what? I'm going to try a sip from the can since that's how it's intended to be consumed. Let's see how it tastes.
I just want to point out, this is the second elixir you've had in a row where the manufacturer recommends drinking directly from the vessel and not pouring it into a can. Red Horse, last episode, you said was the same way.
Yeah, I think with macro brewed beers, that's how people consume them, you know? You're going to get a 12-pack and put it next to your chair. And
I don't think I've ever seen anybody pour a Bud Light into a glass. They just drink it straight from the bottle or the can.
Yeah, unless it's on tap at a bar.
Corona. Yeah, you got the bottle, you stick the little line piece on the top.
Better out of the can.
Is it?
Better out of the can. Yeah, it mellows out the maltiness. This is colder, too, because I put this can in the back of my aging refrigerator.
And we all know that you prefer your beverages teeth-numbingly cold to mask the flavor.
It's great, too, because my sinuses are crazy and that, like, my whole jaw is in pain, and this is very soothing. Awesome. Good. I got to say, I'm a fan. I would reach for this before I reached for a Corona. It's very thirst-quenching. All right. Well, let's come out of the 7th inning stretch and get back to the game.
Act 3 begins with the road back. The hero is pursued by vengeful forces disturbed when they seized the object of their quest. During the celebration, Suzanne Dorn is watching the news. And in the background of this celebration, she sees her husband Roger with his arm around a blonde, and the two of them disappear behind a door. Coach Brown informs Rick that he is going to start Eddie Harris against the Yankees, even though it is Ricky's turn in the rotation. So for a kid who has worked so hard and has improved so much, thanks to his magic eyeglasses, this has to be crushing news. But he shows his maturity by, even though he's devastated, he says, well, what's best for the team? He understands. And Coach Brown even says, don't read anything into it. You're one of the guys that got us here. Just Harris has a better record against the Yankees. He's a veteran pitcher. He's got more playoff experience.
Yeah.
Now that the team has returned to Cleveland, Jake returns to Lynn's apartment, which is still unlocked, and finds it empty. Lynn has moved in with Tom.
Yep.
So probably the fantasy that he had after they have their night together during the ordeal segment is that she's going to be swayed now. Oh yeah, I remember the good stuff about a relationship with Jake and I'm going to leave Tom. That is now squashed.
Absolutely.
Suzanne Dorn is a revengeful force against her cheating husband, Roger.
Yes.
Gets gussied up just pours herself into a red dress.
Pours herself. Wow, that's a great phrase.
And seduces Rick at a bar. When they in their post-coitus at Rick's apartment, she reveals her identity and leaves. We also learn that Rick and Jake share an apartment because Jake is in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And she walks through the kitchen and says, hi, Jake, and leaves. And Jake is like, what? So he goes to the bedroom and Ricky is sitting there, head in his hands, going, I didn't know who she was. I swear to God.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. And so now the two of them know Roger's going to come after Rick.
Yeah.
Jake says, I don't know what she's up to, but once it's game time for their one-game playoff against the Yankees, he says, you better be suited up and on the field before Dorn even gets to the locker room.
And we know that Dorn is willing to not do his best. So this is bad news, because if Dorn decides he wants revenge on the team, he could spoil things, sabotage Ricky's plays. So it's definitely a vengeful.
Yes, for personal reasons, even though the previous game when Ricky accused Dorn of tanking the play on purpose, Jake, in his leadership role, says, we're professionals here, Ricky. We don't tank plays for personal reasons. But we do know that that is a possibility. And in what I saw as the final road back segment, Willie tells Jake that Serrano wants to sacrifice a live chicken to help wake up his bats But they can't get a live chicken, so they arrange for a bucket of KFC to be delivered to the locker room. And this does not satisfy Joe Boo.
And maybe not the most religiously sensitive, culturally sensitive treatment of voodoo.
Yeah. When I watched the movie, one of the advisory notices before, it's like, strong language, sexual situations, culturally inappropriate depictions.
Yeah.
Both of the voodoo, Joe Boo stuff, and there's a lot, again, the Indians. I mean, the team has changed its name now as a part of that push, along with the former Washington Redskins football team. Oh, one more. I'm sorry. Dorn finds Jake in the locker room as they're suiting up, and Dorn says, "Have you seen Vaughn? Tell him I'd like to have a little talk with him."
He's the quiet, simmering kind of pissed too.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is worse.
And then it's game time, which I saw as the game against the Yankees is the final battle. So I drew the line there. That's the end of the road back.
That brings us to resurrection.
Oh my God, we agree?
Point for point. Point for point. The hero faces death one more time in an ordeal, battle, or showdown. This time the danger is on the broadest scale of the story. Now, death would be the death of their season, right? The death of their team. Well, the season's over, but this would be the death of their hopes to win the pennant. And there's nothing in a sports movie, there's nothing that's more of an ordeal, battle, or showdown than the final game. I mean, this is by definition. And the danger being the stakes of this game could not be higher. I mean, I guess it could be Game 7 of the World Series, but that's not the goal here. The goal here is to win the pennant they haven't won in 35 years.
I loved that actually about this movie, that it doesn't take us all the way through the World Series. They didn't even get to the playoffs, the official playoffs. This is a one-game series against the Yankees to win their division.
There's so many sequences in this movie that skip us forward in the season. And when I was just watching it for the first time, I was having trouble keeping track of, even though they really spell out as much as they can in the movie, I was having trouble keeping track of what part of the baseball season we were in. Because I don't know that I've seen a tiebreaker game like this. So anyway,
well,
the Yankees.
That's because you're an Angels fan. Oh, dang! Oh, I felt that. Oof.
It's such a.
Oof. I'm so sorry.
You diminish the glory.
I'll send you a nice fruit basket.
You diminish the glory of your awesome team by taking cheap shot after cheap shot at a clearly much inferior team, club, franchise, ballpark.
No, the Angels have won as many World Series as the Dodgers have in the last 30 years. So it's I'm just more recently victorious than you are.
I will accept that. Because the Yankees and the Indians are tied, there will be a one-game playoff in Cleveland to decide the Eastern Division Championship, a.k.a. the pennant that they haven't won in 30 years. And now it's game time. It's going very poorly until the bottom of the seventh. It's 2-0 Yankees with 2 outs. Dorn steps up and gets a base hit. Serrano homers, and the Indians tie it up. Now, as we learned on the plane flight, Vaughn has not been pitching this whole game. It's been Harris. But he's becoming fatigued, and he has let the bases get loaded. And Lou calls in Vaughn, who strides out of the bullpen and onto the field to the sounds of Wild Thing. And it takes him really the length of the third act of this film to get to the mound. It's just the longest walk to the mound.
He's soaking in the moment.
Yes, but he's also, you can see he's actively nervous.
Terrified, sure.
And he gets some coaching from Lou that he barely digests. And then Dorn walks up to the mound. And we think, oh God, what's going to happen? But he says to him, I've only got one thing to say to you. Strike this MFer out. And that's a great moment because we see that Dorn has changed too. He is putting the game ahead of his personal feelings, and he's letting Vaughn know so that doesn't add to Vaughn's tension. He doesn't have to worry, is Dorn going to mess up this play? Now he knows, at least professionally, even Dorn is on his side. Now the whole team is on his side.
Yeah.
To make things worse, Vaughn is pitching against his nemesis. Triple Crown winner, Haywood, who has homered every time Vaughn has faced him, but in an awesome sequence with great smack talking from catcher Jake Taylor. He throws 3 fastballs in a row and strikes him out, and the crowd goes wild.
Got him! Swing!
The music, too, by James Newton Howard in this scene is...
Oh, Lordy, 3 straight heaters, and the Yankees are blown down. No runs, 2 hits, 3 left on. And are you ready, Cleveland? We go to the Indian ninth, still tied at 2.
So cinematic and sportsy.
I just got chills.
Jeff, I will admit something to you. This movie, this one makes me cry.
Really?
Yeah.
I got emotional too.
When Ricky Vaughn, this do-no-good kid, makes good and succeeds at this thing. Oh, love it. Yeah. This is why sports movies.
This is your Mr. Holland's Opus moment.
Therefore, sports movies. Yep.
Yeah. This is a great sports movie.
It really is.
Now it's Jake's turn, and he gets up to bat, and he's 0-12 against the Yankees pitcher. 0-12. And he swings. It's a strike, but Willie steals second. And then, after a comically complex series of baseball signals that I love, it's it's not unrealistic, but it's comically tapping your crotch, doing the cross, tapping your nose, shoulder, crazy signals. Jake points to the bleachers, calling out his shot, Babe Ruth style.
Yep.
And then the pitcher tries to hit him.
Yes.
And then he calls it again. He points to the bleachers again. The pitch comes, slow motion. Willie takes off toward third. And instead of cracking it, Taylor bunts. So Willie rounds third. Taylor is running slow-mo as fast as he can. I mean, you see Tom Berenger, his face is just like, God, I'm too old for this, but I'm going to leave it all on the field.
Yep. On his bad knees.
Taylor beats the ball to first base, and Willie slides in safe at home plate, and the Indians win, and the crowd goes insane.
Yep.
We cut to fans at the bars and everywhere. They're celebrating.
Bob Uecker is beside himself.
Yes. Oh, my God.
Doing his fist pump. Indians win it. Oh, my
yes,
God.
He is the least partial sportscaster in the history of sportscasting. The team is hugging and jumping. Even Dorn and Vaughn are gripping each other's shoulders. And then Dorn pulls his fist back and whack with a right to the face. And yes, I made sure to get the punch information correct. And he just knocks Vaughn to the ground.
Punches Vaughn 6 times. Exactly the number of times.
But then Vaughn gets up and they embrace. They're made up. It's handled.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's done. And that's the end of the final battle.
That sequence of Taylor bunting, the slow-mo starts at 1 hour, 38 minutes, and 20 seconds. And it lasts until 1 hour, 39 minutes, and 14 seconds. It's 56 seconds of slow-mo.
It doesn't feel like
for a play that would have taken probably less than 10 seconds to occur.
Wow.
It is so well done, I think. And there's almost no music.
Yeah.
I think there's like a hum. Like a tension-inducing hum, maybe, if anything. And I might be imagining it. But otherwise, it's just the sounds of grunts, of men throwing the ball, running sounds, and the slide. That's all we hear. Oh, and of course Bob Uecker, Harry Doyle announcing what's happening.
Hayes around third. He's going to try to score.
Really great direction from David S. Ward.
Well, yeah, it's a well-done sequence. I love the conclusion of this movie.
He slides. He is safe. The Indians win it. Oh, my God, the Indians.
Yeah, me too.
It's exciting, and it's... you see this, and you're like, how do people think baseball's boring? Now, of course, this is a heightened, dramatic scene that is meant to excite the audience, but
all sports movies are like this.
They are, but I see this kind of thing in baseball all the time. So I'm like, when people say baseball's boring, I'm like, you're not watching it.
Yeah. Yeah, or they're just not understanding the stakes. Because I think that's what makes baseball exciting is the stakes of every play as things stack up.
Right.
And the score can change
so fast,
drastically in one inning. It's not like football where when the score is tight, you know exactly what they have to do. There's a million combinations of how to win or how that inning could go well or bad. And this is a perfect example of they've been playing so hard. And, two teams can play great and one team still loses by a lot because it's this instant and that. It's like golf. You hit the ball, you get it in the hole, and then it's a whole new game now. It doesn't matter what you've done before. It's now. It's right now. How are you going to deal with this at bat, being on this base? This is a great example. Like you just expressed it perfectly. This is why baseball is really exciting to watch.
Right, yeah. It's the strategy of each moment.
Yeah.
Game 1 of the Dodgers this year, they were losing until the fourth inning, and then they put together 5 runs in the fourth inning. It happened so fast.
Yeah.
And that's the inning that gave them the victory. It was just they were doing nothing until then.
And I've been on the other side of so many of those games.
Oh, we have to.
But the other thing about having that many games is you get to watch them win sometimes. It's not like, 16 games of a pro football season where it's easy to lose 16 games.
Right.
But when you have 120 plus games.
And if you lose 5 games in a row as an NFL team, your season's pretty much done.
Yeah,
but if you lose 5 games in a row of a 162-game Major League Baseball season, that's a drop in the bucket. You can still turn this thing around. I love baseball. I love it so much.
I know you do.
All right. That brings us to the final segment of the hero's journey. Return with the elixir, or freedom to live, as Campbell calls it. The hero, having won some precious treasure or reward, now returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle. As you say, the crowd is going ape-s. Harry Doyle and Monty are celebrating inside the press box. Rachel is stunned in her owner's box as Charlie stands next to her celebrating. During the on-field celebration, Jake sees Lynn sitting in the box seats, alone again as previous, and she holds up her left hand and shows her unringed ring finger. She has chosen Jake. She has left Tom just after moving in with him.
Mm-hmm.
Like what did she not move in with Tom? Did she move out of that apartment into something else, into a different place?
He wasn't enough of he didn't stalk her properly. She was really attracted to the
I'll have to watch
Unhealthy Pursuit.
I've never seen Major League 2, so maybe Tom then stalks Lynn. I don't know. I'll have to watch that. I've never seen it. That is for Jake. Not only is he now the division champion, he also has won Lynn's heart.
Yeah.
And she comes onto the field in violation of Major League Baseball attendee rules.
We don't see her arrested, but probably that's what happens after.
And so now the team is successful. We don't know if they surpassed that 800,000 attendance mark, though. That's one thing that isn't mentioned.
Right.
So even though the Indians put together this comeback, Rachel could still move the team. So again, Major League 2 next April. But the Indians stay in Cleveland, obviously, because that's where they are today under their new name as of this season. So everybody wins except for Clu Haywood, where he's going to go into the visitor's dugout and drown himself in tobacco spit.
I really like that for Jake, the stakes aren't get his career back. The stakes are going out with glory because he knows from his physical condition, he can't compete again at this level. And so for him, it's really about cementing his legacy, repairing the damage that he's done to his career and his relationships.
Yes.
And he's a classic underdog, but he's not the young 26-year-old hero. And in that way, this is an unconventional sports movie. And in that way, it's great that it doesn't go to the World Series because that's not what it's about.
And I love the scene. You get some crowd shots. Harry Doyle says it's a capacity crowd for this final game. 75,000 people.
Wow.
The super fans in the outfield, the ones who say too high, the ones who dress up in the Indian, their costumes at this point are much more elaborate. They're all wearing big feather headdresses. And did you notice that? How throughout the season, they put together more and more elaborate costumes until by the end, they're, almost team mascots.
They turn up their cultural appropriation game to 10.
Ouch. Oof. Man, you had to make it negative, didn't you?
Sorry.
Well, that wraps up Major League. Friends, thanks for joining us at the ballpark today. We hope you had a good time, whether you're a rookie viewer of this film or a longtime fan like me.
Please share the hero's journey with friends. Like, subscribe, rate, and review. It really makes a difference to us. Our goal is to spread this idea and enjoy films and books with as many people as we can, and that helps us. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and if you would like to support the podcast, please visit patreon.com/heroesjourneypodcast. All patrons receive access to bonus audio episodes where we discuss trivia about the film or book we just covered. Other tiers include access to video segments and the right to vote on the subject of future episodes.
Thank you to all patrons who make this show possible, including our demigod patrons, John Peterson Jr., Scott Sanford, Ricky Garvin, Jeff Scott, Joseph Wilbur, Michelle Calderon, Ami Garvin, Salathiel Jones, and Jasmine and Pete Hudson.
And to those of you patrons who aren't listed, know that we appreciate and value you too. Please continue to send us messages on Patreon, interact with us on Twitter. We love talking about this stuff with you. You're a very special group of people who care about stories in the same way we do, and we value your input when you disagree or when you have a different take. So please get up on the social media and agree with me so that I can win.
There have been... I've recently, there have been some comments within Patreon from some supporters who are suggesting other themes for future episodes. We really appreciate those. And thanks for sharing your comments to us about the show and what it means to you. That means a lot to us.
Special thanks to Taylor Jordan for composing and recording the Hero's Journey theme and interstitial music. Thanks to Jason Dorff for our awesome episode artwork. Links to their portfolios can be found on the About page at heroesjourneypodcast.com. Major League is copyright 1989 Morgan Creek Productions. Thanks again for listening. Until next time,
journey on.
Up your butt, Jobu.